So, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to Blue Sky Horse Radio. And oh my goodness, like we're just before the holiday season here. It's been a very rough year for everyone, definitely. Oh, it's the 22nd of December. And this is at CKMS. Yeah, we're listening to Blue Sky Horse Radio. My name is Jenny, and this is at CKMS 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo. Thank you for tuning in. If you have Facebook, you can go to the Blue Sky Horse Radio Facebook page, and you're going to be able to watch some amazing paintings. Because today with us on the phone we have Rhonda Snow. Rhonda Snow has been a keeper of the spirit horses for many years, and she's protecting a very sacred breed of Canadian horses, Indigenous Canadian horses. And we also have with us on the phone from Alberta, Christine Gallant. Thank you so much to both of you for coming on Blue Sky today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so Christine is going to help out with the conversation. Christine and I both belong to Canadian Wild Horses, which is an advocacy-oriented group of people that really try to advocate for horses and for people also. And Rhonda, of course, is the person we're going to be having a conversation with. So thank you to the sponsor, which is also Canadian Wild Horses. And so Rhonda, could you please tell us a bit about yourself? Could you give us an introduction, please?
Okay, my name is Rhonda Snow. I'm from Northwestern Ontario. My native name is Minogiziba, Quebec, and that means the woman that goes all around in the sky, in the water, on the land, going in circles, and the good woman who's trying to do good things. And I'm from the Loon clan, and I'm very proud to be part of the Loon clan. And my father is Status from White Earth, Minnesota, and my mother, who is passed now, was Métis. And when I was a young girl and I lived on Colonization Road, I used to wander down to my girlfriend's house, and when I was waiting for her on the stairs, I was quite shy because I was teased often for having Native blood in me. So I would try to kind of stay in the shadows as I waited for her, and sometimes it took a long time for her to get ready. So I waited on the staircase and hid. But it was at a logger's place, and he owned a logging company, and he would often have men there early in the morning, and they'd be drinking coffee. And I would be listening to their stories as I hid around the staircase. And the stories that would come up often were about these little native ponies that lived on the islands and in the woods, and they would wander free. And they often called them Indian ponies. And I was quite mesmerized by it because I had rode a stallion in North Dakota where my relatives were. And I loved horses, and I used to paint white horses. So I thought to myself, someday I'm going to find them. And as I grew older, I finally got some horses of my own. And one day a lady from the Ministry of Natural Resources came for coffee. And I asked her, when she flies overhead doing her job at the Ministry of Natural Resources, do you ever see any of those little ponies? And she said, no, I've never seen them, but I've heard they were out there. And I listened, and she said that there was a group of people. It's not a big organization. It's just a group of people called Rare Breeds Canada, and they needed help finding homes for the last ones that were in trouble. And so the more I found out about it, they were in Minnesota. So I thought, how did they get there? So the more I researched on it, the more I found out that there was only four mares left on an island of Lapsacroix. And the previous stallions, one died of old age, and then the other one was shot by a hunter thinking it was a moose. And then they were trailered over to Minnesota, finally, the last four mares. And Fred Isham was one of the ones that led that rescue. And he took, after it hit the papers and the Spanish registry came and said, no, they're not deemed Mustangs. Fred took two of the original small ones, and he rebred them. And they bred amongst themselves after they bred them to one tiny Mustang named Smokey. And then after that, he took the two mares and they inbred. And that was one of my main focus, and that was one of the herds besides the other one that had been at a loggers camp. And there was another herd there. They were a little bit bigger, and I promised Rare Breeds Canada that I would do what I could to get them. And so then eventually I worked with Rare Breeds Canada, and I have to give them lots of credit because they did a lot to help this breed survive. And they were one small herd. Fred Isham had one small herd, and then the other ones were a little bit bigger, and brought them back into this area. And it did cause a bit of a controversy because a lot of people didn't really remember about them. And I was told at the time they were Mustangs. Oh. But in my mind, I thought the Spanish registry told me they weren't Mustangs. Mm-hmm. Well, then I called one of the ladies that was involved in that inspection, and she said within 15 minutes they knew they were not Mustangs. So then I thought, how could that be? Because the history books say these Mustangs came up, and they were introduced. The Mustang horses were introduced to the native people throughout North America, but they were deemed not to be Mustangs. So that made me start researching stories about them.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you're saying actually that these horses have always been here?
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
So the more I mentioned it, the more people would argue about it. But I kept on asking more questions.
That's really interesting. Well, thank you for that. So, Christine, did you want to take some of your questions?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. Long ago, in times of colonization, I noticed there's one painting with it's a missionary or a priest, and he looks like he's not very happy looking, when he's watching the little ponies. Is it true that Indian ponies were deemed worthless and useless during times of colonization by the colonizers?
I was told that, and that's why I painted that painting, that they didn't want to see the little ponies breeding in front of the children. They didn't think it would be healthy for the children to see that. Even though, springtime in that painting, there's rabbits, baby rabbits, and it's well known in the native culture to understand that spring is the new beginning and of all animals, and these little ponies were running like the wildlife also. But they loved people, so they may have witnessed some breeding, and the missionaries didn't think that was healthy. So I had often wondered, if that was enough reason, but then I started to go into the archives, and I found in the Indian Affairs archives many, many pages of the colonizers as they came to colonize the native people and put them on the reserves. They documented in the report, it says, the worthless little ponies, need to be rid of them. They're not for any work, or even though they used them going across Canada and whipped them, and there's documents of them saying they were worthless. And in 1920, it said, we're finally rid of the worthless ponies. They thought they had rid themselves of them, but they didn't.
No, they're all over the place still. When you first started researching Indigenous, when did you first start researching Indigenous ponies all across the northern continent? Because I know you've been at this for months and months now, collecting all kinds of research from all over, from the U.S., from all across Canada. There's even ponies here in Alberta that the Shaganappi, that's, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. The Mustangs were never deemed worthless, but the documents in the archives specifically call them native ponies, Indian ponies. they didn't call them Mustangs or Mustangs brought from the Spaniards. It's clearly in 400 and some pages in the archives, the Canadian archives, that they were Indian ponies, native ponies, and worthless and too light for any plowing or any hard work. So when I first got working with Rare Breeds Canada, even when I brought them back into the area, there was a lot of people that argued, they can't be always here. They couldn't have survived. But I kept on saying, well, how come the moose did and how come the wolf did? So that was quite a long time of trying to research that. And then from there, it seemed like they were the giveaway ponies. But within the last year, I started to research, and in my heart, they are native ponies that were all over North America. And they were used in the military right across, and the scouts were supplied themselves with little native ponies or Indian ponies, and it's documented that the other horses couldn't match the speed and endurance of the Indian pony. And if you look online, you'll start seeing a lot of information about the plans of getting rid of them. And as the years go, other horses were introduced, and then spots and stripes and different colors came. And you can see as the years go by into the 1900s, the size of the ponies did change, but it was documented that they brought in thoroughbreds and Morgan stallions to make these ponies the ones they chose, like the bigger mares, to breed to them, to increase the size, to be more profitable. And they tried to force the chiefs to give up their ponies. And it's been documented in Canada. There was like thousands of them in chief bands right across to BC.
Wow, my gosh. I was wondering about this here, land race. Can you tell us what that means exactly?
Well, when I finally connected with all things equine, and I did a series of radio interviews. Finally, Larry Aiken came on from Leech Lake. He has passed on now, but he was a historian and knowledgeable of the Medea when birch bark squirrels and little ponies were documented since the late 1400s. And that there made me really start to research even deeper. And so after that, I started to look into whether or not these little ponies were all over. And can you repeat that question one more time? I want to make sure I get right to that point of that question.
Yes, land race.
Okay.
Can you tell us what that means exactly?
Okay, so then from when Larry came on and said that, I realized there was more to it because the elders were always saying that they were always here. And then I was really quite attacked in the area from some horse people. And I remember I had called you, Christine, about that, and you just really gave me encouragement to continue on. So I phoned the Texas, I think it's AM University, and talked to Dr. Cothran. And I said, I gave him the information and how I felt about it. And he said, well, there could have been pockets that could have remained, and they could be land raised. And so I thought about that, and then that gave me the encouragement to keep on looking to see if these were only Ojibwe ponies or are these native ponies. And the more I researched into it, the more I feel that they were all over North America.
Wow, my gosh. And you've even had DNA testing on the ponies out there too, the ones that you found.
There's been DNA testing from Rare Breeds Canada funded the DNA testing, and they found that these were had unique DNA. The DNA could be mixed blood now because of the settlers influencing them, and the chiefs hung on to these little ponies. They were a symbol of worth to them. They hung on to them. They were forced to sell them or give them, and they were being destroyed and switching them for cattle. There's finally some survived because the agents found a market for them up at the Northwest Territories of the Gold Rush, the Klondike Gold Rush, because settlers' horses weren't tough enough. And so some of them survived up there, but they would have had a hard life. But they've been documented, the native ponies and Indian ponies, throughout Canada and the United States.
Wow. My gosh. And when did you first become aware about the ponies of the Bronson Forest in Saskatchewan? Like, those are native ponies too, aren't they?
Well, when I started to look further into it, because I wasn't sure if it was accurate enough to just call them Ojibwe ponies. I felt, from what I was researching, that they are native ponies of all nations. Some were influenced in different ways by different horses that came along because of the settlers, and yes, the Spaniards' horses when they came up. But truly in my heart, I thought that the native ponies was the name for them, and I did switch that name over to native ponies now. And you were the one, Christine, that made me aware of the Bronson Forest ponies, because once in a while you would do the Alberta Wildies, but then you had posted a picture of long ago, I remembered, of smaller little ponies, and I also saw some running across the road somewhere out west. There's also another picture that I've been searching for too. It's up in BC, of a tiny little ponies. They have them in saddlebags, and there's no way that they're Mustangs, the size of Mustangs or anything. They remain small up there, and so that was kind of on my mind too, because I wondered, how could they be that tiny over there? Because the Mustangs that were brought up were bigger than these little 12-can native ponies, and the reports saying they were worthless, mangy ponies, and the cattle companies were complaining, so they would fence the cattle grazing lands off, and they were starting to be able to keep the worthless nuisance little ponies out of the cattle grazing fields, which was always a problem in the archives. But they still couldn't control the native people's dogs. But I just started to research all over the place, and then I asked you where those pictures were that you had put online quite a long time ago, and then I think you found them again for me. Do you remember that?
Oh, no.
No?
No, I'm going to have to go back and look, because I have so many pictures of ponies, I should have written down.
That's okay. We can find them for a different time as well, and maybe do a follow-up conversation, because we really have so much stuff we want to talk about. And Rhonda, you've been doing this for such a long time, including when you had your horses up north where you live there. Well, for me, it's up north because I'm in southwestern Ontario. Christine mentioned that she's out west, so for her, it's not quite up north, but. Lots have changed over the past few years, and now your herd is actually living here in southwestern Ontario as well.
Right. But just a note on the Bronson, I finally found that they were in the Bronson Forest. So I went on YouTube, and you can go on that YouTube page, and there was a little bed breakfast that took tours out to see them. So I contacted them, and they said they hadn't found them for 4 years, that they had all died. They got killed somehow by wolves or something, but I asked if there were skeletons or anything that they could make sure that they were really dead. And then finally I reached a cattle company that was higher up in the woods, and then they were the ones who told me that they were spotted. And the pictures of them they're like little native ponies. So I called the cattle company, contacted a father whose grandfather had taken in quite a few, like say 200, and got information on them, and they believe that they are also the native ponies too.
That's incredible.
Do you know, are they protected? And if so, who is protecting them?
I believe they're not protected enough. There was some laws out there of some sort of protection, but not the protection that would be government-wide. I think they need more help.
Yeah.
But they are
Oh, for sure.
and they're doing really well on Crown land. So it's proof that little native ponies can survive on Crown land again. And they are healthy, and I think that that's where they need to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I hope that they can always live there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
4 weeks are a problem, and people are a problem, but more knowledge out there on how to leave them alone and stay a distance would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, Yanni, what were you wanting to ask?
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're sharing your paintings right now as well. And right now we're looking at one where there is a moose and there are a number of horses. Your paintings are beautiful, and for anybody who has seen them, and there's so many comments whenever you share your paintings, people love them. And you always get so many beautiful words because you're truly incredible artist. So, but would you talk about, I mean, you're doing more paintings to spread awareness of the native ponies. So you get your inspiration obviously from the stories that you've heard of the elders and other stories. But this specific one here with the moose, could you tell us about that one?
Would that be the yellow one?
It's yellow background, yes.
Okay, well that's the painting of the last 4 mares, Lillian, Ishki, Darkface, Diamond, and they were the last ones left in this area. I believe there's other ones throughout Canada, but these are the last ones left in this area, and they're the ones that Fred Isham's group of men heisted across the lake to Minnesota by the light of the moon, and they took them across the ice, and the trailer, the reverend, or the minister, the reverend, Wally Olson told me that trailer did tip over, and one mare did die. But the reason why they had to do that is because the time was running out for those mares. They were getting the health organizations, the health officials, and they didn't said they were dirtying the water, so they took them over thinking they were Mustangs, because the last small stallion in there that's laying down was shot, and they thought it was a moose. A man thought he was a moose.
Oh.
And there was another stallion in that painting, and he died of old age. So they were at the end of their breeding line. There was no more stallions left.
That's really
and
sad.
I think that because it was just so important that those last 4 mares seemed like it was the end of the line, but it wasn't, because the other paintings show the vision and how they needed to go to Minnesota. So it's just a sequence of what happened in this area.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. You've been very active in the past while too. It seems like you must be painting daily, or I'm not sure how quick it takes you to finish a painting.
Well, I've been
incredible.
I've been sick for quite a while. I have ulcerative colitis, and I also, when I first got it, I was really sick. So I have like severe anxiety, and I also have post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's been a bit of a struggle. But my therapy is painting, and when I can get my life stresses under order or work on it to help it, I can paint. But I often lay down before I go to sleep at night, and I think about what's important next, and I think, how can I put that down in a painting? And it may take me months to come up with something, and then if I come up with it and I feel good about it, I can probably do one in about 24 hours. And then sometimes I'll dabble with a bunch, and it'll take months, but it's just an amazing healing journey for me, as well as a healing journey for us all, understanding that the history books aren't right and trying to do good things. I'm working on a painting right now, and I think I put about 10 hours on it, but it's for a very important project, and it's a picture of the vast prairies that sometimes in those books it makes it seem like they were like desolate prairies with nothing going on, but there was herds and herds of native ponies and buffalo. So this new painting I'm doing is that. And it's been busy working with Catholic school boards for reconciliation, and I've done learning about Zoom and Microsoft Team and things like that. So I'm pretty old-fashioned, so I'm learning a lot about that, and I've got a process of a lot of paintings on the go, and there's a little stallion in the area that lived for 40 years on the North Arm of Rainy Lake, and his stories are quite incredible.
That's amazing. Maybe sometime we can do a special where you just share the stories. This time we're trying to get your information out there. And for anybody who haven't heard of Rhonda Snow yet, there are places online where they can find your paintings and more information. Could you please tell people where that would be?
I have a Facebook page. It's called Native Ponies now. It started out with different names, but the more knowledge that I'm learning and the more I'm working with people all over the province and hearing their stories, I'll be putting more out there. And I'm hoping to I'm a little bit sick still, but I'm hoping to have more paintings for sale online soon and, get on my feet that way.
That's all right. So what about this painting? We're looking at one right now where it looks like there are children crying and horses are standing above them. Could you tell us about that painting?
That painting was a story shared to me. How when times of colonization, when times were very tough, when they stripped the culture away and lost a lot of hope. And the children would sometimes, a man told me when he would go with his siblings under the schoolhouse crying, they'd hear the little ponies coming and they could hear them snorting and they'd see their noses. And the children would stop crying because they slowly would give them comfort. And all those stories weighed heavy on my heart. So that's the painting I painted of that. Yeah. And some of the paintings I agreed to help others who have the little ponies and to help them for feeding hay. So TJ Stables, she has some of the prints, and they're printed. I'm not sure exactly what she has or the types of prints now because I'm not there because of COVID, but she has some there on her page too. And then the new paintings I have here aren't on there, but that's for a good cause also.
Well, we can share some of the links out as well when we're finished with this conversation. There's so many. I know you've been painting for a long time. It's just incredible. You should maybe have a book eventually. You probably have enough for a book already.
I'd love that. I do not have much money at all, but my goal is for these little ponies to be put on Crown land again, and for the government to understand what went wrong and what was done wrong. And 80% of Canada has got Crown land, so there's a lot of room, and there's not enough room for the people that were put on reserves to continue their traditional way of life. They need more land also. So maybe with a combination of the two needs that were done wrong could be reconciled, because their ponies could be put out again, just like the Bronson Forest ponies. And also horse slaughter has been a problem too, because the government, if they recognize what they've done wrong, why would they be even chancing the fact that there could be some native pony blood that's being mixed in there? And the disrespect that they have put on horses in general need to be reconciled. Even the workforces and all the horses that are going to slaughter, that needs to be reconciliation. And the wildies and all these horses that have been really, it's been not written right in the history books. So it's to take a look at what they do for money. And that's what these little ponies were for money, and now money is pushing horse slaughter.
Yeah, it's really horrific. You have a lot of good ideas. There's one painting we're looking at now where you have written sacred on the two of the horses' bumps and the one a dollar sign.
Well, that's when they started to bring in, and it's somewhere around the 1889 in that area, where it's documented in the Indian Affairs archives that they were going to force the chiefs to understand. The younger chiefs were starting to get the pressure to go cattle farming, but they could live and survive traditionally harvesting. And the chiefs, and many of them fought that change of life. But eventually, they started to bring in these bigger Morgans and thoroughbreds and crossing them with some of the worthless bigger mares and convince them to go bigger for money. And that's all about farming, cattle, control, you name it, all kinds of farming. It's all about control and taxes, and it's a change of life. And the Native people lived a good life long ago. And it was a different life. They didn't go do chores every day. They harvested their animals, their food, and they gave tobacco, and they did things respectfully. And they all lived in harmony. So the Native people on that one side on the left, they are there with their little horses, but they were changed because of money and farming. So you'll see maybe some wheat in that picture.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, sacred meant nothing anymore. Money ruled.
Yeah. It shouldn't Crown land. It really should be all given back, to the Indigenous peoples, because there's so much of it everywhere, and because then the ponies could be set free, in the wilderness, and the Indigenous peoples would protect the lands and the ponies again.
Yes. So Isaac Murdoch, he's from I think north, but he's from not southern Ontario, but more eastern Ontario. Up there, he speaks so wisely about Crown land and Native people surviving on their own in their own way, and I believe that's the same with the Native ponies also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you think your research will take you next?
I think it's been traveling across the schools. It's not about money at all. It's just about, what's in my heart and what I've found. And it's about my whole research, to tell you the truth, is about kindness. Being kind to what we think is not profitable. Why it's so important to have a lot of money now. That means you're important. Being kind to the people that are walking on the streets who are struggling.
Yeah.
And even have the painting of the fish boy. And yeah, he was different. He was not cool then. He was teased. But the knowledge that some people have that have no money, they're humble and they have a lot to share. And these little ponies were little and they were called worthless. And I think it's all about bullying and being kind. And with kindness, we can have love, and we can open up these lands and share them with the people and the ponies that was taken away from them.
Yeah.
And it's just about being kind. Why fence them in? They need to have their families too. A stallion should have at least 10 mares. And then they know what to do with each other, and we can learn from them. We can learn from the people that don't have much money. It's the ones that have the big money. A lot of times, you're seeing it in politics. It's not that. So I'm hoping the kids will learn about the AIDS fire and everything that was taken away, the teaching. There's a horse dance. How long ago was the horse dance? When was that started? A long time ago. We need to find out about all these beautiful stories that our children were robbed from. The moon, the stars, the fisher, the horses, the fish. There's different nations all over. Instead of nursery rhymes, made up fiction. there's some true stuff that's just absolutely magical. And it all starts with the teachings of being kind.
Definitely, I agree with you. We need it. Money doesn't solve many things, and there's just too much resource development, and all of the problems seem to go back to somebody's trying to make money off of something. And you're right. With love and compassion and kindness, we would be a much better world.
Yeah, it's like corruption started a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
And then truth comes out, and corruption is because of money. And these little ponies were deemed to be destroyed, and they almost were. They're mixed in with other horses. But corruption starts, and corruption exists in horse slaughter also. And it's the people that have money that are running all these organizations. When we need to put our animals and the wildlife where they were, and the people that lived in a good, natural way in the wild, and maybe start learning a little bit about them, and you won't hear much about corruption.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, very true.
Christine, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Rhonda?
This is just incredible hearing all of this.
Yeah.
You know, it is absolutely
It's such a
amazing.
good conversation on this dreary morning. And I was going to say, too, we came here this morning, and it's so icy out, and I wanted to say to people, be careful out there when you're walking or driving or what you're doing. The weather is very treacherous right now, so I just wanted to say that. It's amazing speaking with the two of you. It's really lifted my spirits this morning for sure. So yeah, Christine, I know, thank you so much for joining. I know how much you love Rhonda, and that it's been really nice to have you in this conversation. But yeah, definitely, whatever you guys have to share before we say goodbye, tell us.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to say is on that Native Ponies page, often I'll have like paintings going up, and like say a horse slaughter events, or events of, you know, anything from bullying or whatever, like print them out. Feel free, print them out. You know, that's my permission's given to do that. So it's not about, like, I'm not painting to make the money off the paintings. I want to share them.
That's incredible. Do you sell any of your originals?
I have quite a few years ago have sold some originals. I would like to do that sometime. Maybe I'll be healthy enough in 2021 to start doing that more. But right now I'm working on some big projects, and it's not for profit. It's just to try to help spread the word. So hopefully in 2021 I'll get more word out about it.
Mm-hmm.
From then, I would hope to be able to be, I'm still sick.
Yeah.
So I'm working from home, and I do a lot of Zoom with the school boards and things like that, showing how to do art and explaining bullying and things like that, and explaining what happened to the little ponies. And so that's really, really been good for me to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, in 2021, I hope to be healthy enough to do more and get the word out. But I think that there's some big projects coming up, so I think it'll get out there more. And then after that, maybe in 2021, I'll have a line of some paintings too, of the new ones I'm doing. So I'm doing a sequence right now of about a dozen paintings of the stories across across Canada and United States, and how the Battle of Bighorn and how many ponies were documented in there. 15,000 to 20,000, I think, ponies in all marching order, and how the government even confiscated them from the chief. Like, and there's just stories out there that in how the fish disappeared, damming up the rivers so that the native people couldn't get fish, and there's just so many stories to paint about. So it's just a process right now. I'm doing like 12, I think, of the across Canada during pollinization. So I hope to have those out soon. And then I've been doing some doodling for children. So it's
You're staying busy.
yeah.
To say the least. Well, that's really amazing that you let people print your paintings for a good purpose, I suppose, a good cause. That's really amazing.
Yeah, like I hope it'll help, like give the land back.
Mm-hmm.
The statements of bullying, like the fish boy painting, I think it's on there. It's about bullying, like that. When he was young, he was bullied. His nickname, they called him Fish Boy, and now when he's driving around, people want to know where the fish are.
Yeah.
He's a lot of stories. His family too. There's a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about the land, and a long time ago it wasn't popular.
I love the story, Resilience. Isn't that where the little girl was riding an Ojibwe pony in the snowstorm?
Yes.
And she got lost, but the pony found his way home.
Yeah, and that pony riding or running, started trotting, and it started warming her up, and it gave her hope. These little horses, and I'm not just talking about Ojibwe horses, I call them native horses. If we understand their stories, we have hope. We don't have to have huge homes, bunch of vehicles, the fanciest things. There's children that are brought up that laugh at poor people with old equipment and things like that. So these little stories about that little girl getting lost in the snowstorm, that little pony gave her hope. It was a tiny little pony. But what is not big and beautiful isn't really sometimes what can give us hope. It can be the little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
We sure need it nowadays.
Yeah,
It's been a really tough year. It's been a long, tough year, and it's been a tough life for many people in general. And I mean, now we probably live in a time where we maybe can make some changes and go back to some better ways of being. We do.
Absolutely.
We do need reconciliation amongst ourselves and each other.
Yes, and during my times of sickness, I've had some people that have been very kind to me, and I've spent a lot of time in the bush, more in the bush than I ever have, and I've learned more about the land and more about, surviving on the land. And this is what people could go to instead of the malls.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping like more paintings about that. You can't buy it at Macy's.
Well, thank you so much for the chaga. That's wonderful. It's nature, the birch, the yellow, the special birch trees. That's where medicine comes from. I'm so happy that you get to go out in the wilderness. You go camping, you go stay out there, and it's wonderful that you're out there and
that's the type of thing I've been doing, and going around to the islands where they call Horse Island and islands that little stallion lived on, and I know where there's chaga on certain islands and which ones are growing and which ones are ready. And it's funny because the scientific research says the biotin is better in the summer, but the elders told me go get it in the winter. So that's what I do, is I wait for the crusty hard snow and go on the islands on the snowmobile, or check it out in the summertime and just know where it is and go out in the snowmobiles and get it in the winter. But somebody convinced me the biotin was better in the summer, and so I said okay. So I took who I call Fish Boy. I said, there's some chaga over there, let's go get it. And the elders told me there's bugs out there. So we put the boat up, and he gets out first and ties it up. It wasn't 1 foot on that ground, and the swarm of, I guess they were yellow jackets or something.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there must have been 30 of them all around. Well, he jumped in that boat, all bit up. And I said, I guess we should have listened to the elder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. My goodness.
So it's just little learn, and their memories. Yeah, their memories. But there's just every day out in the woods, and if we have those ponies out there. Oh, there's wonderful moose stories that I'm just sketching now. things that happen with young kids even getting their own food, and what happened when a moose charged the one boy and the other boy saved his cousin's life, and a little stallion lived around there. So there's just so much to learn by just getting out in the woods.
Mhm. That's incredible.
And you and your relatives also have you do your own wild rice.
Well, I have just the most fantastic relatives that came across. I found them when I was riding a little pony in the States, and that's how I connected with on Facebook and some friends, and I found our long-lost relatives. And Jimmy Merhar is one of them. And he is a true McCoy. He's made 23 birch bark canoes. He's the most wonderful man. I'm so blessed to have him in my life. And I've stayed there and helped him with his wild rice. I've gone out in the canoe with him and used the knockers, and he's showed me and taught me so much. He does tens of thousands pounds of maple syrup every year, and he taps 10,000 trees. I think it's 100,000 pounds, but anyway, he's the real thing, and he does the birch bark baskets and speaks fluent. He knows a lot of teachings. He's a wonderful man. So, yeah, he's taught me a lot. And again, it's in the paintings as much as I can put in there too, because there's stories of the little ponies and they helping with the wild rice harvesting, and the little stories of Menominee Kashi, the little bird in the wild rice patches. And there's just so many wonderful stories that are so much different than Humpty Dumpty.
Mhm.
Oh yes.
Really.
That's beautiful. So, if we are trying to encourage anyone to go and check out your prints online, they can go to Native Ponies on Facebook, and you mentioned TJ Stables. There's a way to purchase via Terry Jenkins.
Yeah, when I found Terry, I did say to her, I can give you some originals and you can print some out, and that would be helpful for you to get someplace bigger with these ponies rather than just start out with ponies. And with the paintings, it helped her explain the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could get there to continue to do that, I can't because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I might just drive around Canada and talk about the stories too.
Yeah.
I might do that too, and hopefully to raise money for them to get their lands back.
Yeah.
And anti-bullying.
Yes.
The story.
Well, thank you so much. So go on.
Oh, I remember one time you were going to do this ride.
Yes.
It was quite a long ride that you were. I got the photo of you beside. I think it was Menomin, your stallion.
No, I think it was on Nimikie probably, but it could. Menomin wasn't a rideable. He was very old. But I was going to do a ride. Once I was going to ride into the Parliament here. I had called Justin Trudeau's office through the reconciliation. I'm talking hundreds of phone calls, and I never got anywhere, not even one penny for hay. And then I wanted to ride to Thunder Bay, but my life was not good, and I had terrible mental stresses, and I just couldn't do it. But I wanted to ride, and of course, now I don't even think I could because I'm not healthy again. But I did want to ride all the way to at least Thunder Bay. And I used to do some endurance riding, so I know that I could, but it is dangerous. So,
yeah,
forced too. But I really wanted to do that. But instead, I decided to get it out there because people would argue with me for years. These ponies didn't exist. I used to work with the wild horses in a different way, and some people who own Tennessee Walkers or even people that were connected with some of the culture asked me to stop doing it because it was offensive to the horse people. Oh. But there's a different way, and it's a non-dominant way to be around horses. It's the same amount of time to put a halter on a wild horse, but with no stress. So there's so many different ways to be around horses, and the Native people had that. They didn't have any fences. They had no gimmicks. How did they get on these horses? If they were just introduced, according to the history books, how did they do so well without spurs, without all those bits and all the round pens or the fencing corral? They did it non-dominant, the horse they put above them. A gift of a horse was one of the biggest gifts, besides like a feather or whatever, but they held these horses above them, and the horses knew that.
Yeah.
Not dominant at all.
No, they are sacred.
There's been people that have seen, like a man, a very knowledgeable man said, when he went to like chuck wagon races and things like that, he can see a difference between Native people being non-dominant.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda, and thank you so much, Christine, as well. And it would be amazing, Rhonda, to do another conversation again with you. Maybe we can speak more about your paintings and specific ones, especially after you've created the next batch that you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. I do got a series on the go, and it's from the archives of how they were the worthless ponies, and right to even the little pony that survived on Rainy Lake, Tony, the little stallion, and how he even robbed the hunters. Some hunters were pulling from a boat, and a lady I spoke with, she said she looked over there and Tony had stolen all the ducks out of their cooler and ate them all, and then ran away with one, and he was eating it. So, I mean, he was a wild little pony, but he loved people.
Yeah.
So there's stories about that. So that's kind of in the series too.
Yeah. Wow. Well, did you have anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye today?
I just want to say thank you so much, and I wish you all the happy holidays, and stay safe, hopefully, in these times.
Mm-hmm.
But, the times are here for a reason, and we don't know what they are yet. But I know the bush is the place to be, and these ponies knew that too.
That's awesome.
And when agents would whip them to cross Canada to the reserves to make sure that the agents were making sure that the people on the reserves were obeying and turning into cattle ranchers and stuff like that, they whipped those little ponies, the useless ponies. And if those ponies had a chance, they'd run away. They didn't run away from the Native people. So these are the last things that I kind of want to say, and that's what that my next series is going to be about.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and have a really amazing and relaxing and nice holiday yourself, and stay safe and warm, and I hope you feel better as well.
Yeah, it's just going to take a little bit of time, but eating fish and moose and deer and all that kind of stuff is really helped me a lot. So being in the bush like that, and I'm planning on doing that a lot more in the future. So I have lots of plans of painting out there, and not just painting in the home like I used to. So I've got plans to do that and be in the bush even more and more. So
that's wonderful.
So glad to hear from, and maybe someday you can join me.
That would be amazing. We would both come, no
Gosh.
problem.
Well, yeah, I haven't had moose meat since I was 17. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If the dream comes true, it could be possible.
Yeah. Oh, Chai Miigwech so much for coming on the show today, Spirit Sister.
Okay.
Well, you are like the knowledge keeper of the sacred Ojibwe ponies.
Well, my goodness, I'm getting older, and I forgot where I put my phone yesterday, so that's why it's important for me to get it down on.
Yeah, we're right there with you on that one, so no worries. Okay, well, thank you so much, Christine, as well, and thank you to anybody who is listening out there in the community. This is, again, Blue Sky Horse Radio We're at CKMS 102.7 FM, Radio Waterloo here in southwestern Ontario, speaking about horses and Rhonda Snow. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Yanni.
Thank you. Talk to you guys all soon. Bye. All right, we're gonna